Happy New Year, Princess Carolyn.
Hello, little ones. Mama loves you, and you, and you, and you.
They're so beautiful.
And you, and you.
Rutabaga, we got it!
Yeah?
Tough Hollister is the new Pegasus. We saved the agency.
Wow, everything worked out. You gotta love a happy ending.
So here's the thing about point of view in Bojack Horseman. It's no secret that this show is more successful than many at getting its audience to actively root for and support a protagonist despite them doing some objectively horrible things. And while people do want Bojack canceled in the end, there is a lot of compassion for him, more so than any celebrity who did what he did would be shown in real life. Let's do a little thought experiment. Imagine for a moment that you lived in Hollywoo during the time Bojack was being discussed. That is, around the time the article that Paige Sinclair wrote in Season 6. You've never gotten any glimpse of Bojack's home life, you've never seen him interact with his peers, you've never even met him. You've only ever seen him on the screen, in passing as a child on Horsing Around, and more recently in Secretariat and possibly Felicity Huffman's Booty Academy, if that's your thing. As far as you're concerned, you know as much about Bojack's life as you do Channing Tatum's. And then, you read the article about his behavior by Paige Sinclair. She details his relationship with Sarah Lynn in her final days and how he supplied her with the drugs that ultimately caused her to OD, and was with her when she died. Later, you see Bojack do an interview with Biscuit Spraxby admitting that the allegations are true. He admits to his mistakes, apologizes to Sarah Lynn's mother, and details his new life as a recovering addict. How would you feel about Bojack after this interview? Perhaps conflicted about his past, but ultimately, you'd probably join the mainstream opinion that we see all around Hollywoo after this interview, where he's praised for his honesty and humility in terms of addiction. Then, he does a second interview. This time, however, Biscuits not only discusses Sarah Lynn, but also how Bojack tends to take advantage of those women he has power over. She very clearly outlines the cycle that Bojack has perpetrated for most of his adult life, and how his abuse of that power he holds over women has done irreparable damage to some of those women's lives. How he went to prom with a high school girl, dated a woman who just woke out of a coma, slept with the president of his fan club. We don't know anything else about these women. We've never even met them or seen how the situation played out. All we know is that Bojack has slept with countless women, many of whom he had innate power over. Not to mention that we also can't be sure if there's stories that Biscuits is missing. Hollywoo and the Elite do an excellent job of covering up mistakes and transgressions, so there may be even more that have been swept under the rug. From our perspective, as an audience, we have no idea the severity of Bojack's transgressions and might begin to speculate, in a way that we don't after learning so much about Bojack's personality and past. She also dives further into details about Sarah Lynn's death, revealing that not only did Bojack provide the heroin that killed her, but he waited a full 17 minutes before calling any sort of ambulance or paramedic. Instead, he was more concerned with how he would be perceived, and worked to make it look as if he arrived after she had already OD'd. But not only this, she reveals that Bojack could have had a hand in kickstarting Sarah Lynn's addiction by leaving water bottles filled with vodka around the set of Horsing Around. She does know that there was an incident where Sarah Lynn got drunk and had to be sent home from set, and we again don't know who she heard this from. As audience members, we might be inclined to say that somebody was prejudiced against Bojack and wanted to take him down, but we can't know if that source had an agenda as a regular citizen of Hollywoo. All we get are these facts through Biscuits. We're left to extrapolate them as we see fit. And then, Bojack reveals that he also slept with Sarah Lynn later in her life, fully cementing that cycle of abuse of power.
She was the president of my fan club.
You slept with her.
We had a lovely evening together. We both got something out of it, and...
Did you take a high school girl to her prom?
That was a family friend.
Did you help a teen mom sneak out of rehab and take her to a high school party?
I didn't take her. We went together.
Is it true you once dated a woman who'd just woken up from a 30-year coma? Were you attracted to her naivete, too?
What does this all have to do with
You
it?
had sex with the president of your fan club. You had sex with your agent's assistant. You party with underage girls. You don't see a pattern here?
When you put it all together, it looks bad.
Do you see any connection between those other women and Sarah Lynn?
There's no connection between anyone. Sarah Lynn wasn't like those other girls. I loved Sarah Lynn. She was like a daughter to me.
I just keep seeing this story of you taking young women,
No.
grooming them.
I didn't groom anyone, okay? It's not like I got Sarah Lynn drunk for the purpose of taking advantage of her. She was 10. I didn't even have sex with her until she was 30.
I'm sorry, what?
After learning all of that stuff, how would you feel about Bojack then? Because I get the sense that most of us would not associate with him anymore. Knowing nothing about his home life, his personality, his efforts to be better, I personally believe I wouldn't think twice about just never following his career again and allowing him to fade into obscurity. In fact, I'd be inclined to consider him more of a danger to young women and a predator, from what I've heard from Biscuit's Braxby. I'd be worried if he were not imprisoned and would likely consider him a serial groomer, someone who really should be in prison for others' safety. Let's be honest, we wouldn't really care so much about Bojack going to rehab and getting genuine help for his addiction so much as we just want him gone after the second Biscuits interview. I think prison would have been the first advocation in this case in the public eye. But for Bojack as it is, a lot of us are much more accepting and understanding. We recognize his humanity more, ironic since he's not even human, and want him to generally get better for himself. We have so much perspective on his upbringing, his allies, his career, that it's difficult for us not to understand how he became this way and why he's made the mistakes he's made thus far. There are, of course, different levels to this. While yes, there is an alarming number of people who assert that Bojack didn't do anything wrong, missing the entire point of the show, thank you very much, and I'll get more into this later. There are many who can look at his actions pretty objectively. According to a recent poll that I put out on my channel, most people, over 70%, would prefer to see Bojack canceled for good, as they have with celebrities in real life, mostly because it's the best for everyone, including Bojack himself. However, I think there is a difference between understanding this and genuinely seeing him as a pedophile or someone who consistently grooms young women for the purpose of sex, especially Sarah Lynn. He definitely grooms Penny. That's just a fact, even though some will deny it, but I think that our view of Bojack as a person is starkly different than what Biscuits paints him as during the second interview. Lots of the reasoning on this poll for removing Bojack from the Hollywoo culture was that it would ultimately benefit him as well, and not only keep women safe from him in the future. In real life, however, when we lack this context, we cancel people more out of hatred and anger, rather than genuine concern and hope that they'll learn from their mistakes. Let me know if you think I'm wrong here. I'd love to discuss this further, and I hope nothing I've said thus far offended you personally. I do agree with this poll, and think that canceling Bojack is the right move, but I do also find that the rhetoric involved in Bojack's canceling is vastly different than what we usually see because of how much perspective we've gotten on his home life and his past. I've made other video essays where I've had to literally defend characters who have left Bojack, like Diane and Hollywoo, simply for the fact that there are many who criticize people for doing so. That power that he holds as the protagonist, the one who gets the most perspective, the most time spent with him, is so strong that there are those in the fandom who would defend everything that Bojack did. Yes, even with Penny, astonishingly, somehow, even though the show goes out of its way to show how creepy the situation is. I mean, Christ, there are some people who say Penny is at fault for coming on to him, and that he didn't do anything wrong because he, quote, turned her down twice, and because she's technically above the age of consent. Hey, get this? It doesn't matter what the age of consent is in New Mexico. Just because something is technically legal doesn't make it moral. Why do you think everyone has such a problem with grooming? Why do you think the events in Escape from LA are such a big deal in the show if it's not a moral issue? These are technically not criminal behaviors, even though they definitely should be. Bojack is over 50 years old and has lived in this house as a surrogate father figure to Penny for months on end. To have sex with her is taking advantage of her, even if she propositioned him at first. Not to mention that the age of consent being what it is not so people who are full adults can have sex with teenagers without worrying about legality. It's to decriminalize sexual behaviors between those who, let's say, meet in school, but one of them turns 18 before the other one. It's to protect people like that. And yet, we still have people saying Penny forced herself onto Bojack, even though it's not even possible. She has no power over him in that situation. But because of the abundance of context that we get for Bojack's life, and the lack of context that we get for Penny's life until later in the show, a lot of people are inclined to side with Bojack in this case, mostly simply because he is the protagonist, I feel. Or they identify with him and want to excuse themselves as well, which is, you know. But ultimately, people will still defend Bojack simply because we have much more information about him as a character. We see flashbacks of his childhood, and we even hear his own internal dialogue in Stupid Piece of Shit, revealing the depth of his anxiety and self-loathing, and causing us to sympathize even further with him, and for some in the fandom, to excuse most of the mistakes that he made. He seems like more of a rounded out human than Penny is, so some people are going to, generally, take his side no matter what he does. And this isn't to say that Penny is written poorly in any way, it's just stating a fact that the more time we spend with a character, the more we are endeared to them. And also because of this nuanced perspective, you have a lot of fans who identify with Bojack, so they don't want to paint him as in the wrong because that means they'd have to paint themselves as in the wrong. Perspective isn't only used to make you feel bad for a character, it can also be used to relate to certain people, to send a message to some people who are similar to a certain character. And that's what I think Bojack does, although sometimes a lot of those people missed the message. And I feel that these Biscuits interviews differed in success simply because of how Biscuits orchestrated them, and how she drastically altered the image of Bojack that she wanted to portray, largely due to Paige Sinclair's influence. If they want Hollywoo to forgive him, they can twist the story to make him more forgivable, as Biscuits has done for most of her career. But if a reporter comes to them and is able to convince them that it's better for their career to be harsh and uncompromising, they can make him look like an absolute monster, and lead the interview in a way designed to trip Bojack up and make themselves look like the moral paragon. On this subject of POV, it's interesting how many people hate Biscuits and Paige Sinclair when, in our real world, they'd probably be hailed as heroes of this situation, exposing the harsh underbelly and daring to say the very dark truth. But because we're rooting for Bojack and his recovery here, we see them as enemies, getting in the way of that recovery process. Paige Sinclair is annoying, overbearing, and often careless with others' emotions in the pursuit of truth, while Biscuits is fame-hungry and greedy for success and power. Neither of them are really terrible people overtly. Sure, they can be annoying and materialistic, but I always notice that these two specifically get a lot of flack for selling out when really they're doing the right thing. A lot of people are more inclined to believe Bojack with what he says in the parking lot.
The gross part is she doesn't even care. This is just a ratings win she can use as leverage for her next big paycheck.
Maybe.
That Biscuits doesn't care about this at all and just needed a ratings win. While I do think that's partially true, I don't think that's the only reason she did it. Even though, objectively, Biscuits and Paige are outlining the truth of this situation and pretty effectively conveying Bojack's pattern of destruction. These interviews are also extremely skilled at omitting specific details, as the show does, to help prove whatever point the specific interview is reaching for, which is a huge part of utilizing POV to help the audience identify and understand a character, sometimes too effectively. In the first interview, whenever things got rocky, we never move forward down that line of questioning. Look at what happens when Bojack begins to get defensive about the heroin that Sarah Lynn overdosed on.
And then she overdosed.
On heroin you purchased for her.
Well, I didn't purchase it for her, I just had it.
You just had heroin lying around.
No, not lying around. I had that heroin because I wasn't doing heroin, so I had it. You understand?
In your original statement to the police, you said she called you came to the planetarium and found her. That was a lie?
Yes.
Would you say Sarah Lynn dying was your rock bottom?
Biscuits completely changed the subject to avoid those sensitive topics that might get Bojack in trouble. But it's so natural, you might not even notice it. She steers it right back to what Bojack is feeling and how this situation affected Bojack himself, to get the audience to continue thinking about how horrible this experience must have been for him and to focus less on the shaky details of the tragedy that might paint him as abusive. But the second interview is heavily focused on Sarah Lynn and the effect that Bojack directly had in her death and the lives of these other women. It's interesting because the emotional journey and processing of Sarah Lynn's death and how it was shown to us, the audience, from the series perspective, is actually similar to this strategy. The 17 minutes that Biscuits brings up were never originally shown to us, simply moving from Sarah Lynn's death to the day of the funeral the next episode. Honestly, I'm a little ashamed to admit that I never even really thought about how he would have explained anything to the police, or whether or not he would have stayed with the body after that moment, or whether or not he rushed to the hospital at all. I was just thinking, how sad for Bojack. And this is the exact idea that Diane touches on in Sunk Cost and all that.
You know what I thought? The first thing I thought when I heard Sarah Lynn died? Poor Bojack, that he had to find her like that.
That's right! Poor Bojack! That's the angle!
But then I kept thinking. I wish I didn't, but my stupid brain kept thinking.
The portrayal thus far has been Bojack as a victim. Biscuits is one of the first ones to paint him as the abuser in this case. We do see in The Old Sugarman Place, in the adaptation of Sarah Lynn's story by Ryan Murphy, super tasteful I'm sure, as he's known for, that Bojack was portrayed as a tragic father figure who brought her to the hospital and presumably found her in the planetarium. Paul Giamatti Bojack does not look that beat up, high, or out of sorts. He looks remarkably well composed and appropriately distressed, which speaks to how we, as an audience, saw this tragedy initially. While Bojack does deserve blame for it, it was first portrayed as just a tragedy, one that was not really anyone's fault, even if Bojack does blame himself after the funeral. We see it as something tragic that happened to Bojack, not that Bojack caused. And not necessarily everyone sees it this way either. I'm not trying to assume your opinion. But we don't see it for what it is, really, until the show wants us to know what Bojack has done. They want us to recognize that Sarah Lynn's death was in his hands, and that he always has more control over the situation than it seems, simply because we're watching Bojack's perspective on all these situations. So, it appears to us, as it does to him, that he has no control over any of it, when in reality, as revealed to us through Biscuits and the 17 minutes, we see that he is actually terribly in control of it all, and that he omitted the 17 minutes in the story originally to make himself seem like more of a victim than he actually was. The power of POV was so effective that the writers and the creator of the show pretty much had to explicitly tell the audience that they should not be rooting for this man, that it is his fault, whether he intended to hurt others or not. And not just with these 17 minutes, but also with Filbert as a show in season 5, it's clear that the writers saw the issues with the effect that Bojack had on some people who watched the show, using him as an example of why they should be forgiven, and that they are ultimately good people who make mistakes, good people deep down. So, in the last 2 seasons of the show, there's quite a large shift in perspective where, yes, we still get context for Bojack's home life and why he acts the way that he does, but we also hear much more from those around him about their opinions on these mistakes that Bojack has made. People besides Bojack voice their opinion on the Penny situation. Diane directly tells Bojack that he needs to change and get help, and that Filbert is no excuse for him to act the way he does. And the hurt he puts on Gina is so much more visceral and visible than before, all to show the audience exactly what Bojack's pattern is, and that there is no excusing it, and he is hurting people on his own volition. And I love that they're able to use POV so effectively to show the different sides of the issues for everyone involved. We can certainly understand Bojack, given all the context we've already gotten about him, but when we see the emotional effects of his mistakes on his victims, we're less likely to side with him. And we see how this distinction and change in POV can affect the dialogue for a person going forward. After the first interview, even after admitting his mistakes with Sarah Lynn, people praised Bojack. He got special treatment, free food, everyone called him a hero, all because Biscuits decided to paint him as a tragic figure who wants to do better and actively is doing better. But after the second interview, Bojack can't even pay for the food that he wants. He gets made disgusting plates of garbage, receives dirty looks everywhere he goes, and never gets a break from the scrutiny, all because Biscuits decided to paint him this time as a predatory monster who repeatedly hurts young women. The POV and the interview directly affect Bojack's perception in the public eye. And when we frame his mistakes from the point of view of the women who are actually hurt, it makes us feel way less bad for Bojack and more inclined to despise him. Old Acquaintance is a single episode in the show that I think focuses most on this topic of point of view and does the best job at showing the fact that despite who we might root for, everyone does have a full life and is a person with their own feelings, goals, and ambitions. While Princess Carolyn and Judah are our favorites, and we are for sure rooting for them in this conflict, Gecko and Rabidowitz at the beginning of this episode describe themselves as the good guys.
Vanessa, we're getting chuffed this part and coming out on top. I know we will, because we're the good guys.
They show that these characters deserve to win just as much as our main cast, even though the entire audience is definitely praying that PC lands Bojack this job, mostly because she's just who we spent more time with, and who we care more about. The story involving PC thus far has been from her perspective, so when Rutabaga comes back, we see him as an enemy, rather than a man who's trying to do better. To us, he's the guy who cheated on his wife and left PC twisting in the wind, but if the story was from his perspective, he would be the Bojack figure, someone who's made mistakes but is ultimately sympathetic. To himself, he's a guy who's made mistakes in his past, but now wants to do better for the sake of his marriage and his family. And as much as we don't want to admit it, he does seem to be improving. While he leaves his wife for the Pegasus opportunity, he does promise to be back for the kid's birth and follows through on that promise, even though his job is in a precarious position. I mean, the storm that's been going on this entire episode while PC is winning straight up automatically clears when they get the final piece to beat Princess Carolyn at this game. Just because we follow PC doesn't mean she's the good guy, the hero. She's made mistakes too, just as Rutabaga and Gecko have, and she doesn't deserve to win any more than they do. Not just because, certainly, she gets more screen time. I mean, do they not deserve their own happy ending? I mean, Rutabaga needs this job. He's about to raise 7 children. Don't think it'd be a good time for this agency to go under. And while this ending is so disappointing for the viewers, it is the same type of happy ending we would have gotten with PC winning as we hoped. Instead, this party with Rutabaga, his wife, and Vanessa would have been miserable by the end of the night. So while it is a happy ending for us, because from from our POV, everyone we care about won, it still isn't objectively good or happy. It's just perceived that way because of who we root for and how the show has set up this conflict. Although, I do love this episode for specifically pointing out that these people aren't necessarily evil. Not to mention that we also in this episode learn some slimy things that PC has done to secure her position at Vigor. Even though she appreciates Laura, recognizes her talent, and tells her to her face that she pushed for her promotion at Vigor, she ultimately followed her own selfish desires in the past, hurting Laura's career in the long run. While yes, Rutabaga definitely made mistakes, it doesn't mean that PC is a saint just because he's facing off against her, as we see from her actions across all 6 seasons. She's drawn in by the industry, she can sometimes be callous towards those close to her, and she doesn't necessarily care about the social impact of what she does. And after this episode, we also see that Rutabaga did genuinely want to change. When they work together in Season 4 again, he's actually conscientious of his wife's needs, and is shown to be supportive of her, and actually raising their children. He's still kind of a shit, where he flirts a tad with PC, and calls, regular parenting co-parenting to lessen his own responsibility. He is still trying, and it is still clear that he's made progress since the last time we saw him. And the point that this episode makes is that while, yes, he isn't perfect, PC isn't either, and we root for one of them, but they might not necessarily be the good guy. Sometimes there just isn't a good guy. And later, we learn abundantly that Gecko is nowhere near a bad person either. We've just seen her as one because we've been following Princess Carolyn and her opinion of Vanessa since Season 1. They don't really even have a real conversation until the one about motherhood in Season 6. PC never bothers to learn what Vanessa's actual goals are, and only focuses on sniping and taking her down to prop herself up. She sees her as the enemy, when both of them are really on the same journey throughout their life. It's just a matter of how that journey is told to us. It's funny that everyone, including me, is caught off guard by Gecko being actually kind and generous to PC, because we don't really have much evidence to the contrary anyway. Sure, she was a little passive-aggressive sometimes, but she was never really directly awful to PC herself. And while she does beat her in this conflict and take Laura's allegiance away from PC, it wasn't ever done out of malice, it was only done out of personal gain. And PC would have done the exact same thing if she had the opportunity. Even when she's competing with Princess Carolyn, Vanessa doesn't see her as the enemy. She never did. Sometimes you have to face off against others in your career to succeed. There's no other option. But it doesn't mean you have to hate your opponent or wish for their failure in any way. Like Diane says, there are no good guys or bad guys. We're all just guys who do good things sometimes and bad things sometimes.
And all we can do is try to do less bad stuff and more good stuff.
Just because someone is on the opposite side of a conflict than you doesn't mean they're automatically evil, and it definitely doesn't mean you are automatically the hero. But sometimes people can be portrayed as an enemy even when they never had a villainous agenda in their entire life. And this isn't just in writing, television shows, or media either. This happens all the time in real life. PC's realization that she had no reason to hate Vanessa this entire time is extremely realistic. We build up these perceptions of people in our own mind based on very little actual information and begin to extrapolate and assume things about their behavior simply because we've only seen a certain side to them, our own perspective. But when you're able to expand your point of view and take into account other people's side of confrontation, you can learn that you actually might have a ton in common, and that the caricature you built up in your own head of the person is incredibly one-sided and is only based on what you've seen. Overall, POV has the direct power to shape our opinion of other people and situations that we might not even have any personal insight into. The way stories are told to us, the context that is provided, and the sides that are shown all affect how we feel about the characters we see in these pieces of media and the celebrities in the public eye, and can vastly sway our opinion of these people. Even if they aren't obeying the law or doing morally questionable things, there is a way to show to the audience that they are just a human being at the end of the day. You never know what's going on behind closed doors, and the people you think you know based on the public information you've been given, or the side to them you've seen thus far, might have other sides to their personality that you just cannot see because of the direction you're looking at them from, whether that be the darker part of themselves or the more humane. Even when we have enemies, those enemies are human and have their own reasons for doing what they do. It's not all evil. And just because you're not rooting for them doesn't mean those reasons have to be evil or malicious. But thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. Let me know if you agree in the comments below, and also support us on Patreon at patreon.com/PosiTVty. There you can get all these videos early, you get the unedited essays, and you can join for free to get the early previews before these videos hit YouTube. So it's a great way to get more content for yourself, but also support us in the process. And we appreciate all the support we get on YouTube as well. It really means a lot to us, and we hope you'll join us for our continuing video essays. Probably the best outro I've ever done. Nailed it.